Hi, John. John is here now.
Hey all, thanks for having me.
Hey, John, it's good to meet.
Welcome to our first space together.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, excited to meet you guys as well.
So we have me, Diane, we spoke by email previously, and now we have another speaker with us, Sudo. He's our head of community. Okay, maybe we can do a quick introduction of ourselves first, and then you can introduce yourself, John.
Great.
Okay, so my name is Diane. I'm NIM's social media manager, and I've been hosting most of the spaces. We started this series about 2-3 weeks ago. This is our third space on Twitter, weekly space. And your turn, Sudo.
Yeah, I'm Sudo, aka Simon. I'm head of community at NIM. Super excited to be here on this space with Aztec. It's a super interesting project. And I jump on spaces in general whenever I can with Diane because it's nice to hang out here. On to you, John.
Thanks. I'm John, head of growth here at Aztec. I've been with the project for almost 2 years now. Excited to talk about our partnership and how we can advance privacy in Web3.
Can you tell us a bit more about your background, John? Like how long have you been working for Aztec? Like what did you achieve kind of there? And like, what's your background? Something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's see, maybe to go way back, I was a philosophy major undergrad, but my joke is that I ended up as a management consultant anyway. So I did management consulting for a couple of years, private equity for a couple of years, business school, very kind of TradFi background. And then I got into startups a couple of years ago and actually kind of fell backwards into crypto, really via the Twitter route, by just explaining certain events that were happening. I think my first big thread was around the Bay protocol launch, and did a very short stint at Uniswap, and then knew that ZKs and privacy were going to kind of be the next important thing for mass adoption. So joined the team pretty early, second business hire. I think there were maybe 13 people at the project back then. And we had maybe 1,400 people on Discord and 10,000 Twitter followers, something like that. So it's been a fun ride so far. A little bit of history on what Aztec has been up to. We have hardcore cryptography background. Zach Williamson, of course, is the co-inventor of Plonk, which is de facto ZK Snark standard. And when I first joined the company, we were gearing up to launch Aztec Connect. Aztec Connect was essentially a smart contract on layer 1 that allowed you to do private DeFi using our encrypted state tree. And we deprecated that product in order to focus all of our attention on two things that we're working on right now. Noir, which is a universal ZK circuit writing language. It's got a very robust ecosystem of ZK developers. So if you're interested in zero knowledge in general, Noir is the home for you. And then, of course, Aztec, the fully fledged layer 2 hybrid ZK rollup with both private and public smart contracts. And happy to get into that, of course, as we talk about the partnership.
Sure thing. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, so NIM and Aztec, we're both part of the UPA Alliance, right? And we are quite similar in the way that we do believe like privacy is like really the next big thing and should be the big thing in the space, in all spaces, really. I'll just give like a quick intro of NIM as well. I think most people here kind of know what NIM is, but we are also like a privacy-focused project in the Web3 space, and we really want to build a more secure and private internet for all users. So we use this technology called the MixNet, which is basically designed to provide strong network layer privacy. It obscures IP addresses, traffic patterns, so like the metadata. We do have a product in the making called NIM Connect, which basically works like a VPN with extra steps. It connects you to the NIM MixNet, and basically all your packets are mixed using mixed nodes operated by mixed node operators all around the world. And that basically provides privacy in the network layer, so like the deepest level of privacy that you could get. We also like have our transport layer in the privacy stack, so it can enhance privacy for developers as well. And there's a lot of NIM integrations happening, and that have happened already. And we also have like partner with Aztec Network already to basically like further expand accessibility for Ethereum developers in particular. Maybe Sudo, you want to add on?
My screen got logged. Sorry, guys. I'm here. Yeah, so I guess nothing to add there. What is important, though, is the network level privacy that the MixNet provides. I would also add that it's not Web3 specific. So the NIM MixNet is web agnostic. So it works just as well with traditional Web2 apps and to protect privacy and obfuscate data, metadata, communications data, and metadata on the network layer. So I guess that brings us very nicely into your recent launch, John, Aztec, and our partnership and where the NIM mixnet comes into play. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had actually previously pursued a proof of concept with NIM with Aztec Connect, which is our last product, and we're now working on incorporating it into our full ZK rollup. And I think you guys have already spoken to the importance of base layer network privacy. I think Harry explained it using a pretty good analogy, which is, look, if you use ZKs without network level privacy, it's like going out on the street wearing a face mask to conceal your identity, but forgetting to put your pants on. There's something even more base level and fundamental to protecting your privacy than just using ZKs on blockchain. And so the TLDR of why NIM is really powerful for Aztec is the way the Aztec system is architected. You as a user have to kind of scan the state within our system to figure out which UTXO nodes, kind of these state objects, you want to pull down and compute over. So whether you're doing a private transaction with private nodes or whether you're interacting with public state, doing some kind of public transaction, you still want to hide who you are. So I think to just create a little bit of clarity here, even when you interact with a public smart contract on Aztec, your identity is default anonymous. And so there's no such thing as a fully exposed transaction like on Ethereum. There is anonymity by default. Now, the problem when you go and try to retrieve these state objects is that you can run into a situation where you are leaking network level information like your IP and your geo and other things like that, that an attacker could potentially use to triangulate. They could try to figure out, okay, which public state are you trying to pull down? What are some identifiers that they can tag to your account? And then those bad actors could try to triangulate your identity from there. And given a large enough number of transactions, there is this notion of transaction profiling. This was the case with blockchain anonymity tools in the past as well, where some significant proportion of purportedly private mixer traffic could actually be transaction profiled and identified to, if not specific users, then classes of users. So what we think about at Aztec is, how do we prevent the leakage of privacy? It's not always going to be possible, and we're very reliant on users to have good privacy hygiene. But where possible, we try to help users not leak information. And that's where NIM comes into play, is being that layer zero anonymization, privacy protection. It doesn't really make sense to not have that in addition to a zero knowledge privacy protocol. You really want to build the full privacy stack such that we're leaking as little identifying information as possible.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? Because I think it's really interesting and important that Aztec supports both private and public contracts. Why is that so, and why is it important?
Yeah, I think the main thing here is that the way that the Aztec architecture is structured, maybe it's more important to back up and think about what privacy looks like before the blockchain context. What privacy or so-called privacy looks like before the blockchain context when it comes to applications is trusting a central server not to leak sensitive information. So my email is private to my friends. I have the social layer of privacy, but Google is trusted with all that information, and I trust them not to leak it publicly, right? So the transition to Web3 means we need to have some kind of trustlessness. And the way that we solve the trustlessness is you essentially retrieve packets of data in our state tree from decentralized servers, essentially, by requesting to download them with a certain encryption key. And so you go and you search for your private data and you download it to your client, and then you run some compute over that. Let's say you want to send some money to a friend or you want to interact with a private contract. You can take as long as you want client side to kind of run that computation. And then ZK proof gets created on your machine that gets sent back to Aztec. Aztec validates the ZK proof, says, okay, you downloaded all this encrypted state, you did some compute over it, that all seems legitimate, you're good to go. Now, that's the real core power of Aztec, is that privacy by default, right? But what I just described there kind of sounds like a single player game. Like you kind of get to do stuff, but it's not hyper interactive with everyone else. You get to do stuff over your private state. Now, that includes things like changing the ownership of a private note, right? I download a UTXO. I say, hey, I want to reassign the ownership of this UTXO to someone else. That's kind of what we know as like a transfer, right? And so I want to contrast that with an ERC20 where you're actually changing the account balance in a contract. Here, you're actually taking an object and you're reassigning the ownership to somebody else. But for the most part, that's very limiting. Like, we want a whole universe of the type of stuff that we see on Ethereum, right? You get public games and AMMs and loads of interactivity and composability. And so the way I think about it is the privacy component allows for really, really powerful protection over your data and your assets. And then the public side of things allows for interactivity and composability. And so what this allows you to do is say, hey, look, I want to kind of take some stuff out of my private state. Think of that as like a private wallet. It's something that nobody can see, right? I want to go interact in the public domain. And then once I'm done interacting there, I'll shield it back into my private wallet seamlessly. So that's why it's super important to have public and private, because with just private, you kind of get this very, very strong protection, but it's a single player game. And with just public, you get this beautiful composable multiplayer game, but everything's completely exposed.
Okay, that's very interesting. So is that your technology called like hybrid zk-rollup that allows like basically both public and private transactions? Is that really what it does? And because I know that you previously used the structure called Aztec Connect, but now you're focusing on the more like layer 2 kind of next generation chain. And you use this method called trial decryption basically. And so how does like the new hybrid zk-rollup change this kind of method, as well as like the integration with NIM, which like doesn't require decryption anymore? If you're like know about that, it might be too technical of a question, but I'm basically curious, like, is there a way to explain this in a simple manner, like how the way that Aztec was doing things before, the new kind of product, the hybrid zk-rollup, the integration with NIM, and then like the result of all these like put together?
Yeah, I think maybe if I were to try to analogize this, right, Aztec Connect was essentially a portal to Ethereum, a private portal to Ethereum. And so if you think of Ethereum as like a big town square where everyone's just interacting in the public, everyone can see everything, right? Then Aztec Connect was kind of like maybe like a train or something going to a different island that was totally obscure. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch of an analogy, but you could take that train off of Ethereum and go to the private island, and there's no prying eyes there, right? You go behind a secret door, and anything that happens on Aztec Connect, nobody can see. Now, the reason why there's that connectivity to Ethereum is because all of the services and all of the execution is actually on Ethereum. What was happening on that private island was stuff like private transfers and hiding account balances. Now, the main problem with Aztec Connect was that train, so to speak, is it had a lot of benefits. Like, you could fit a lot of people on the train and batch transactions down to Ethereum. And so a bunch of people wanting to go to the private island could kind of like share the fare of taking the train together. But the challenge was that connectivity took a lot of time and it was quite expensive. And not only that, we still relied on Ethereum for all the execution. Aztec Connect didn't really do anything except just obscure transactions and create privacy, but we relied on Ethereum for execution. What is different about this next version of Aztec is we're building our own town square. We're building our own place where everyone will have default anonymity and they can all interact together in one place without having to rely on Ethereum's execution. And the reason why that's so much more powerful is, number one, it's way cheaper because we're scaling. We're not only adding privacy, but we're adding scale with the succinctness property of ZK snarks. But also it improves kind of network composability inside of Aztec itself. Instead of having to rely on two systems, Aztec for obscurity and Ethereum for processing and execution, it's all kind of in one place, which should allow for much more seamless and powerful application. And where NIM comes into play is really kind of what I said before, where a lot of that obfuscation and introduction of anonymity and privacy starts to become irrelevant if people can extract identifying information from your transactions. And so that's really what we're excited about partnering with NIM for.
Yeah, likewise. It sounds like sounds like a match made in heaven. Which brings me to my next topic, because you and us cannot, have a Twitter space without mentioning UPA, because we're both members of it. So for those of you who don't know, UPA is the Universal Privacy Alliance, which was co-founded by Nim and Manta and Secret Network and some other privacy projects in the Web3 space. And Aztec joined, when did you guys join the Universal Privacy Alliance?
I think around Bogota, so right near the beginning. So that was last October.
I was lucky enough to be at the very first meetings before the whole UPA thing was even public, with Kenny from Menta and some others. And the thing that I particularly love about the idea of UPA is that, on paper, there's an argument to be made that these projects are all competitors, right? We're all privacy projects. But in reality, that's not really true, because we all have the same vision. And you mentioned earlier the privacy stack, right? So we all fit into that stack at different points. And as hopefully everybody understands from this call, what Nim and Aztec are doing is very, very different. So it's not like a true competitive relationship, but we can actually meaningfully enhance each other's privacy preserving solutions. So what is your take on UPA, and what does Aztec want out of UPA? So if there's, an ideal scenario in 5 years, you close your eyes and imagine that, where would you see the UPA?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to take a page from ECC, Electric Coin Co. and Zcash's playbook here, and their tagline, which I think is really powerful, this notion that privacy is normal. And I think what the UPA wants to see is privacy as a default, right? And our number one principle is that privacy is fundamental. It's a fundamental human right. And it's not just a human right, but it should be a human expectation, right? That if we design tools with privacy by default, then it doesn't really seem like this harmful, dangerous thing. The problem with privacy in blockchain today, and what happened with Tornado Cash and some Mixer precursors, is that privacy was the exception, not the rule. Now, I like to always say OFAC had the opportunity to sanction Ethereum or sanction Ethereum nodes or, take down the entire network. They could have easily done that, or they could have sanctioned ERC20 contracts or really anything arbitrarily that they wanted to do. And they didn't, and they just targeted Tornado. And I think the reason that they did that was because that was the exception within the ecosystem. Some small proportion of the total traffic ran through privacy-enabled rails. And I think the vision for us and why we're members of the UPA is to say, hey, look, privacy solutions shouldn't be targeted to, adopted by, or marketed to a small subset of privacy freaks and users who have a special need for it. Nobody should have a special need for privacy. Privacy is just something that we recognize as fundamental and as fundamentally useful. And so what we want to see is advocacy and collaboration to make privacy by default tools, networks, and platforms the norm. And I think in our world, we're not competitors at all. We would love to see other networks be really successful in making privacy mainstream in blockchain.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, so we do align basically Nim and Aztec with the UPA principle of the privacy by design is something that we're both trying to achieve. And that kind of brings me to some recent happenings in the space with announcing of Arkham, I think that's how you say it, the world's first on-chain intelligence, where the goal is basically to buy and sell information on the owner of any blockchain wallet. And this is something that we do not appreciate personally. This sets us back. It sets the whole space back, and it's something that we are fighting against. And there's also the new announcement of soon to be launched WorldCoin. I kind of wanted to ask about your thoughts on the two projects and what they're doing to the space and how we should deal with these kind of happenings, basically.
Yeah, so I can't speak specifically to the Arkham team or project, and I think the degree to which I've been following it is that they're a de-anonymization tool. And, I think de-anonymization, chain analytics, on-chain forensics, those are businesses that have been around for a really long time. And I would argue that we're not only not going to stop them, but they're going to exist forever. But I think what we believe at Aztec, and I'm sure you guys believe at Nim, is we can build tools for the opposite, right? I think the best way to fight de-anonymization and incentivize privacy violation is to create tools in which your privacy cannot be violated, because those attack vectors are going to exist. I won't say that the existence of those things makes us stronger or makes the case for privacy stronger. I think that's actually something that they've tried to argue, and I find that very hard to swallow. But in general, I think the best approach to mitigate harmful effects like this is to continue focusing on tools that can't be broken and to continue pursuing partnerships like this, where we're trying to limit the degree to which an on-chain detective could figure out things like your real-life identity. I mean, I've only been following obliquely, but it looks like due to their referral program, real identities were actually leaked, whether that was on purpose or not during the Arkham launch. That's very, very painful to hear, right? We don't want to be in a situation where users' expectations are violated, like where they think they have anonymity and privacy, but they actually don't, right? And so with regard to the Arkham thing, I think it's all about building tools that can't be broken.
I totally agree with that. Whether it's Arkham or not, or whether it's WorldCoin or, the NSA, I think the incentive for privacy violation is very fundamental. Like it's right there, core game theoretical levels. It's knowledge is power. So it's always going to be there. I think that's a really good point. But maybe it's just the echo chamber I'm in speaking. I'm not sure. I also have to admit that I haven't been keeping a very close eye on the Arkham situation. But I was kind of happy to see that nobody actually. So I have yet to see a single positive response to this project launching.
Agreed.
And I really like to see the whole the sunglasses video popping up on millions and millions of Twitter accounts. That was hilarious, I think.
Yeah, that was quite an interesting, I would say, like Twitter drama. But yeah, and then I think John, you might, I'm not sure if you're based in the US or another place, but what are your thoughts, and have you heard of WorldCoin, which is something that's going to be launched by Sam Altman, and like it's expressed as a quest to catalog all humans. Is this going to be different than Arkham? Like, where do you see this going? Do you see this like becoming big? Or have you even heard of it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't speak to WorldCoin's privacy guarantees either. I would say that their team seems very explicitly focused on guaranteeing privacy. I do think they have good intent. I don't know the result of that. Obviously, just at first blush, right? Just collecting the retinal scans of every human on Earth sounds terrifying. I do think they are coming from what they think is the only solution to the Sybil problem, which is what's the only piece of identifying information that humans have? Well, like it has to be biometric. How else can you solve Sybil? I'm interested to see where they take that and how they resolve some of these privacy issues. I would say at first blush, it sounds terrifying to have an index of all the world's humans. And in the wrong hands, that could absolutely lead to some kind of nightmarish surveillance state. But again, I think the best resistance to projects that you think are going to violate privacy is the adoption, promotion, and development of tools that will protect your privacy, right? If that's not the right solution to the Sybil problem, then we need to work on a Sybil problem that doesn't include collecting individual biometrics. And I have faith that we'll figure something like that out.
I agree with you. I think as long as we have all the tools that we need, like whether you want to do something that others could see as like inappropriate or whether you want to do good, as long as you have the tools in hand, you can achieve anything, right? I mean, that's what we've been doing like as humans since the beginning of time. We just use tools and we do it well, we do it properly, and then we can defend ourselves, right? So we kind of go back to the very like beginnings with those kind of things. I hope that we'll all be able to like protect our privacy in the future and that we're not going towards a world where everything will be public. I also wanted to add that it's kind of funny that you guys had a product called Aztec Connect and we have like something called NIM Connect. That's a coincidence, I guess. But yeah, bit funny. I think we'll wrap up here, and super happy about the partnership between NIM and Aztec. And that's just like really the first step towards full stack privacy. And I've been super happy to have you on. Like we've been waiting for this for a while, but it was a bit difficult to schedule, I know. But thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on, and a pleasure to meet you and speak about this partnership.
Yeah, let's keep the ball rolling and have more of these. It was really fun to have you on. So let's do a repeat very soon. Hopefully the audience also enjoyed this quick little Twitter space with Aztec and NIM. And really looking forward to where Aztec will take us. It's a lovely product. It's very much needed. And, we're looking forward to using it.
Absolutely. Same on our side. Thanks, Udo.
Thank you, John, for being here.
Thanks all. Talk soon.
Have a good day. Talk soon. Bye.